Good morning, Duke. How are you? He's just chilling. It's a little frosty out here this morning, but he's being cool. Okay, here's what we got done yesterday, which wasn't a lot, but we're heading in the direction anyway. If you remember yesterday, we talked about the need to fill in this hole in the inner primary where the stock starter motor mounted in. So the starter shaft itself came through here, and then there's two bolts that hold it on. So I was thinking about how we're going to do that. And then I started thinking about this top mount. And you see I've got something going on up here. If you remember from an earlier video, we talked about how the stock top mount that is basically a piece of metal that connects to these two bolts, and then it heads towards the right side of the bike, and on the original frame it connected up to a tab on the frame, but on this one, on this frame, it ends up about 3/4 of an inch, maybe 7/8 short of reaching this tab. And then the other issue is, it's a little hard to see, but this tab is actually probably about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 farther back than it should be. I don't know if that was something that Palco did on purpose, or if that's just kind of the way it came out and they didn't carefully position it. But in any case, we have to deal with it. So one option would be to grind it off and weld it back on. I just don't want to do that. That seems like the wrong answer. So anyway, so I started rolling that around in my head, and my first thought was I was going to take this thing, which is the stock mount, and grind the, sort of the top part of it off, leave myself with just, sort of the flat part, and then reconnect it to the top and weld that together somehow, blah, blah, blah. Once I started doing that, I realized that's dumb. That's going to be way harder than it needs to be. So the new plan is I am going to fabricate an entirely new mount. So towards that end, I got this piece of cardboard, which is actually the back of a pack of sandpaper, and kind of traced around the original mount, got this thing installed, and what we're going to do is we're going to just run this straight back, and this will all be one piece, and then we're going to have another piece that connects up here, and we're going to kind of bend it and drill some holes and do some stuff, and this will all make sense in a little bit. Now, the reason I'm doing that is I'm very lucky. I've got access to a local outfit here in Omaha called Puritan Manufacturing. Good guys at Puritan Manufacturing, and they've got a big metal laser, and I can get stuff lasered out of steel pretty cheap. So anyway, that's how these two issues tie together. As I started thinking about this, I thought, well, I could do a nice clean job of this if I had something lasered. And then it occurred to me, well, why not go ahead and get this thing lasered at the same time? Because the way they do it is, as long as, the total area of metal that you're getting is less than, let's say, I don't know, 10 square feet or something, you're basically just going to pay a minimum charge anyway. So you may as well get a bunch of stuff made at once. So I got this thing kind of halfway mocked up. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take that off, measure it out, throw it into Fusion 360, get my exact dimensions and all that sorted, print that out, and then cut out the printout and mock it back up and make sure everything's the correct size. And if it all works out, I'm going to send that over to Puritan and have our guys there do a little laser cutting for us. So towards that end, I also came up with this guy. This is the rough template. I just stuck a piece of cardboard behind here, traced in those holes, and then just traced around it a little bit. So this is essentially the shape of the piece that's going to go back here. So we'll have that lasered out. And then the other thing I've got here is this guy here. This is the power box. Now, this is something I honestly am not sure this is going to work, but on paper it's supposed to. What this thing does is this replaces the stock voltage regulator and incorporates a capacitor internally, so you don't need to run an external capacitor when you aren't running a battery, because this thing won't have a battery. So the intention here is I want to mount this thing back under here on, I guess, what I would call the seat post. I don't know if you can see this very well. It's going to mount back there. So what I want is I want a little piece of steel welded to the frame that'll hold that. So I did the same thing. I just traced it out on another piece of sandpaper packaging. And I'm going to draw this up as well, and we'll get this thing lasered out of on the same run. And what I'm going to do with these, since I've got, no matter how much I have lasered, so to speak, I'm still subject to the minimum charge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all of these made, and I'll tweak the geometry. So I'll end up with like 2 or 3 versions of each piece. And then once we get them here, we'll figure out which one fits, because this one here, I might, make this dimension a little longer, a little shorter, by, a 1/16 of an inch, not a lot. So we'll end up with a few different options to choose from. And the beauty of it is that none of that trial and error costs anymore, because you're always paying the same price, and it's not expensive. So anyway, that's what's going on there. We should have those back, early next week, and we can get that all buttoned up. In the meantime, have a great day.